Okay.
Alrighty. Hello, everyone. Um, Share my screen. Uh, so my name is Vanessa Maike. I am a professor at the computer science department, and I teach a course on accessibility. This is one of my favorite parts of that course when we talk about image accessibility. So I thought I would bring this to more people. So today we're going to talk about context and image accessibility and why it matters. Um, so here's the agenda of the presentation. First, I'm going to talk about what are alternative texts in case you don't know. Then we'll cover different purposes for images. The first two are more straightforward, images of text and complex images. I'll just show them so you know they exist and you can look further into them if you're interested or uh, if you have any specific needs with them. But the crux of what I want to bring today is in the last three: decorative, informative, and functional images, because this is where it gets a bit of a gray area. And at the end, I'll do a little quiz. Which is the fun part. Just so you know, I didn't make any of this up. Everything I'm showing today is either from the DQ University module on alternative texts. There's also the images tutorial from W3C. If you want more details on any of the purposes of images, you can check out this tutorial. And then the examples I use at the end are from this WebAIM article on alternative texts. So let's start with alternative texts. First off, you might be thinking, well, if images are might be an obstacle for accessibility, we might not just use them. But in fact, when you use images wisely, they can increase reader comprehension. And this is especially a benefit for users with reading or cognitive disorders. So it is, in a way, also an accessibility resource. So you shouldn't discard images completely. Now, providing a text alternatives for all images is important for the benefit of screen reader users. And that's because screen readers, with technology that we have so far, cannot infer meaning just from the images. There has to be some human input into what the image means or what it is there for. And now, what are alternative texts? They're also known as alt texts, so I might use that term throughout the presentation. They provide a textual alternative to non-textual content, like an image, for example. Now, screen reader users can listen to the alternative text. And users who are deaf-blind, you might be wondering, well, what if someone cannot listen and they need a screen reader? Well, that would be the case of a deaf-blind person. They can still access the alt text via, for example, a tool like a Braille display, which is the one here on the top right. And in this case, the text from the alternative text is dynamically converted into the refreshable Braille characters that the user can feel with their fingers in real time as the screen reader is reading out the alternative text. So here are some quick do's and don'ts for when you're writing alternative text. Do's: present the content and the function of the image and be succinct. And the don'ts is don't be redundant, meaning don't be the same as the JSON text. And also in the realm of not being redundant, don't use terms like image of or graphic of, because the screen reader already announces somehow that it's an image, so you don't need to announce that again. You're just gonna repeat the information. Now, the main point here for the presentation is that context is everything. So the alternative text for the same image may be vastly different based upon the context and the surroundings that the image is placed upon. So first, when you're deciding what to write for your alternative text, you need to decide if the image presents any content and if this content needs to be translated into the text. Then you decide if the image has a function. And when we're talking about function, we're talking basically whether this image is contained within a link, so the link has a function, or if the image is a button, which is also a function. So now let's start with the first very basic purpose of an image, which is when you have the image of a text. So what are images of text? Basically is when you have an image of text display that is intended to be read. The general recommendation in terms of accessibility and even for yourself as an author is to avoid this practice because if you create genuine text instead of like a screenshot of a text, for example, it can be resized without losing clarity. Whereas if you have a screenshot and you need to enhance it, it's going to get pixelated. So when you have an image instead of a genuine text, it's more likely to be distorted and or pixelated when you resize the image. And if you need to change colors or anything in the text, it's going to be extra difficult if you don't have a genuine text. Now, in the rare situations where you absolutely have to use an image of text, then the best practice is for the alternative text to contain the same text that is presented in the image. So here's an example. We have in this screenshot an image of a text that is used to convey a slogan text, and it has some decorative effects, like it's a bit tilted and there's a background, and it says your access to the city. So the alt text for this image is the same as the text presented in the image, which is your access to the city. You don't need to include in your alt text the decorative effects like the stylized text and the shadow because they're not relevant. What you really want is to just translate the text within the image. Now, the images tutorial from W3C has more examples of this. I just brought one. If you want to explore more examples, feel free to access that website and you can look more into images of text. The next example is complex images, and this is also rather straightforward, so I'm not going to go very deep into it. I just wanted you all to be aware that this is a type of image that you should know about. So what is a complex image? A complex image is an image that contains substantial information that would be difficult to describe concisely, like graphs, charts, diagrams, or maps. In this case, the best practice is to have a two-part alternative text. In part one, you have a short description that identifies the image as a chart or a graph about such and such. And then part two is where you have a long description that explains the information that is being conveyed by the image, which is where you're going to translate the visual representation of this graph, chart, or diagram into an explanation of what is meant to be illustrating. So when you have a complex image, you have to first, like I said in part one, describe it briefly in the alt text, and then have a complete long description elsewhere, which won't be in the alt text. So we have three approaches to provide a long description. We can describe the complex image in a text directly below the image, or we can add a text link below the image that leads to the long description, or we can provide a data table immediately below the image. And again, I'm not going to show examples of these. If you're curious about how to do this, or if you need to see it, uh, again, the W3C tutorial has all the examples for these three approaches, or maybe it's the DQ tutorial. One of the two has them. Now, we're getting into the more problematic, or maybe the more gray zoned types of images, starting with decorative images. So first off, what are decorative images? Decorative images are images that only add visual decoration to your document. They don't convey any information that would be important to understand the page or whatever context that image is in. For example, you have an image used as a border in the page design, or you have an image with adjacent text alternative. In either of these cases, the image is considered to be decorative. Here's an example of, sorry, um, important note here, and this is a sort of a technological constraint that we have, as far as I know, especially when we're talking about documents. And by documents, I mean PDFs, Word documents, or slide presentations. There's usually no way to tell the screen reader to ignore a decorative image and not announce that there's an image there. So you might say, well, I'll just leave the alt text empty then. No, you should never do that. If the alt text is left empty, then screen readers will announce something like graphic and provide no further information. So that's not helpful either. So the best practice for decorative images in documents is to write decorative as the alt text. PowerPoint and Word have a feature where you have a checkbox that says mark as decorative. According to DQ University, checking that box is not helpful, so they recommend just writing down decorative. And for HTML, it's actually easier. One of the attributes that you have in an image tag is alt, ALT. So you should always have that attribute, but when the image is decorative, you make it what's called null, where you write alt equal open quote, close quote. So this indicates that the image is decorative, and apparently screen readers do understand that. So for documents, this is where the complication is. And here's an example, a very simple example of a decorative image. Like I said, when the image is part of the page design. So here we have two images that are used as borders in the page design, and in between them there's some text. So the purpose of these two bars here on the example is purely decorative. So the alt text should say decorative, or if it's HTML, you should say alt equal open quote, close quote. Right? So that's the basic about decorative images. When we look at other examples, we'll see where it gets in a bit of a difficult definition of what is decorative. Let's move on to informative images. Informative images are images that convey a simple concept that can be expressed in a short phrase or sentence. For example, icons that act as labels. And whether you treat an image as informative or decorative is a judgment that the author of the document needs to make. And that's where we get into a gray zone. There's not like a black and white situation where you definitely know that this is decorative, you definitely know that this is informative. There are easier cases to define, but in general, if it's a judgment call, then one image is not gonna always have the same alt text. Even within the same context, it depends on the author of the image. And this judgment is based on the reason for including the image on the page. So that's why the author makes the judgment, because they know why they're including that image, or they should know why they're including that image. And here's a simple example for the label. Here we have a screenshot showing two image icons, one of a telephone, the icon of a telephone, and an icon of a fax machine, which young people probably don't even know what it is. And next to each image, there's a text with a number. So to identify the device associated with each of these numbers, we have just the image. We don't have any text identifying what these numbers are. So the alt text for these images should read the following: telephone column for the first one and fax column for the second one. And note that the colon is included because the screen reader will read it with a slight pause. That's helpful. It's a very brief pause, but it makes a bit of a difference. Uh, Not as much as if you don't include the colon, it's going to be impossible to understand, but it's a detail that, helps. And the third type that gets confusing with the other two, decorative and informative, is the functional images. Functional images are images that are used to initiate actions instead of simply conveying information like the informative images do. So functional images are used in buttons, links, and other interactive elements. So the alt text for them should convey the action that will be initiated, which is the purpose of the image. It should not have a description of the image, which is the most common mistake people do if they don't know about these different purposes of images when writing alt text. And here's a classic example. We have a button with the image of a magnifying lens, and people's first instinct is to put the alt text magnifying lens. Now, the button or the image of the magnifying lens is being used to give the search button a distinct style. But in this case, the function of the button is to initiate a search request. So an appropriate alt text for the image is not magnifying lens, but in fact is search, because it conveys the purpose of the button. Another type of functional image that is very common is when you have a solo logo image, like the image at the top of a homepage. So, for example, on the W3C homepage, they might have this logo, which is the only thing that has a link that leads to the W3C homepage. So the function of this image is to take the user to the link destination. So the appropriate alt text in this case would be W3C home, because it takes to the W3C homepage, indicating where the link will take the user. Now, if I change this example to the logo, and next to the logo, I have a text saying W3C home that is actually the link, then, well, I think they're both the link. So the image and the text are part of the link. But now there's the text supplementing the image. So in effect, even though this whole thing is acting as a path to the home page, the image is merely a visual declaration to the link. It's actually related with an HCI concept called a fits law. You're making a target bigger and easier to reach. So the image does not represent functionality anymore. It's just decorative. It also doesn't convey any other information, any additional information to what is already being represented here in this link text. So the alt text for this image, even though it's very similar to the previous one, should be decorative if you're in a document, or null if it's HTML, again, to avoid redundancy and repetition. So a very small change, like adding this text next to the image, changed its alt text completely. So I talked a lot, and I know this is a lot of information, but I like to give a little quiz when I show this to students. Is the quiz is showing the same image in different contexts. And so if you're watching a recording, you can pause the video as I show the question, try to think about it and try to answer. Or if you're here, feel free to take your guess on the chat if you want. So let's start with the first question. Here we have an image of George Washington next to this paragraph that says, because of his role as Commander-in-Chief of American forces in the Revolutionary War and later first President of the United States, George Washington is often called the father of his country. So imagine somewhere you have this image and this paragraph together. What would be the appropriate alt text for this image in this given context? Alternative A, image of George Washington. Alternative B, George Washington, the first president of the United States. Alternative C, decorative or null. And alternative D, George Washington. I'll give you guys 10 seconds if you want to take a guess on the chat. Okay, we have A, we have D, we have A. Answer, believe it or not, is D, George Washington. So it's not A. So the content being presented by the image is meant to inform the user that this is George Washington. This is what he looks like, even though someone using a screen reader probably won't be able to see the image. But that's what it's there for. So the image has no function because it's not a link and it's not a button, and it's not clickable. Option A, which was image of George Washington, unnecessarily describes the image as an image. So that's one of the don'ts that I gave earlier, the never include image of. Option B provides extra information that is not present directly in the image and is also redundant with the paragraph that was presented next to it. And option C is not appropriate because this is not a decorative image. It conveys content that is not directly presented in the paragraph next to it. So these examples are meant to induce you to be confused or make a mistake. So don't feel bad if you didn't get it right. Now let's change the example a little bit. Now we have the same paragraph and the same image, but now below the image we have a caption that says George Washington. Now in this case, what would be the appropriate alternative text for this image? Option A, George Washington. Option B, decorative or null. Option C, image. And option D, the image does not need an alt attribute. I'll give you a few seconds to try to guess. Okay, a lot of people are saying A. It's actually B, because now I added this caption, which changed the purpose of the image to a decorative image. Just a quick explanation of the alternatives. The caption may switch the purpose from informative to decorative. Option A is redundant with the caption, even though, I would prefer if you err on the side of caution and add this to the other alternatives, the C and D. C and D are completely wrong, so I'm glad no one said them. Um, Image provides useless information, should never be in alt text. And D is also never the right choice. Not having any alt text is very bad, like we talked about before. So it would be between A and B, and if you do put in alt text, is not the end of the world. Uh, all right. Question three. Oops, I gave you the answer. Now we have the image, and you notice there's a blue square around it, means it's a link. The image is a link. Uh, and below that, there's a caption that is not linked, is not part of the link. And consider that this link will lead you to a Wikipedia page about George Washington. So in case you didn't see the answer that I mistakenly showed, you can take a guess on the chat. B, B, okay, D. Okay, we got B, B, and D. Unfortunately, B is not the answer, even though I probably, you know, I don't think it's completely wrong. Uh, so the image is also a link, so it has a function. You need to describe that function. Now, there's no adjacent text within this link that describes this function, so it has to be presented within the alt attribute. So option D, George Washington, is likely the best choice, even though, again, it's not necessarily, entire just the right one. It's not black and white entirely. Um, while the words George Washington in the alt attribute are redundant with the text that follow, in this case, the redundancy is necessary to adequately describe this function. A screen reader would typically read link image George Washington and then read the caption George Washington. So if someone is accessing just links, which is something you can do with screen readers, they would just get George Washington, and I guess that's why you would put down just George Washington. And you might ask, why don't I put uh what were the options? Why is B wrong? Right? Some of you said B. Um, Again, empty alt attribute is not a good option if the image is the only thing inside a link. Uh, Remember the caption was not part of the link, so you need something to describe this link, because the screen reader needs something to identify it. Option C, read more, is a big no-no when we're talking about links and alt texts. It's a horrible link name, and is also not a good alt text. But option B provides content that is not available through the image alone. It means you cannot tell the image links to Wikipedia just by looking at it, and that's the justification for not using B. But again, between all these options, I would say that B and D are okay. I wouldn't say that B is completely wrong. Um, we could improve this example by making both the image and the caption as part of the link. This way, both content and function are presented within the link, and then the image becomes decorative, and you would put either decorative or a null alt text to avoid any redundancy. Now, I know we're out of time. This last example here, just something to think about, just to show the complexity of this subject. Imagine you have this painting. Uh, I forgot the name. Thing is, I forgot the name of this painting. Uh, but it's a painting of George Washington crossing the Delaware River, So imagine you have the image of the painting and this accompanying paragraph. It says, in this painting, the artist Emmanuel Lutz used light, color, form, perspective, proportion, and motion to create the composition. So what would be the most appropriate alt text but image in this example? Would it be George Washington? Would it be painting of George Washington? Would it be painting of George Washington crossing the Delaware River? Would it be a classic painting demonstrating the use of light and color to create composition? Or would it be this enormous paragraph saying, painting of George Washington crossing the Delaware River, swirling waves surround the boat where the majestic George Washington looks forward out of the storm and into the rays of light across the river as he leads his weary troops to battle. And basically, this example is meant to show that there's no right answer. We can go over the options. Again, the best alternative would depend on the context and the intended content of the image. So first, you need to determine if the content of the image is presented in the surrounding context. In this case, is not, at least not entirely. You have some explanation in here, but not very detailed. So, and the image is not within a link, so it doesn't have a function. In this case, we have to decide what part of the content is relevant for this, whatever this is a document, is a web page, what is it? So option A probably doesn't describe the content adequately. The fact that George Washington is in this painting may not necessarily be relevant. Option B doesn't provide much additional content, especially related to option A. It may be appropriate to identify the image as a painting if that's relevant. Option C provides more information that might be helpful, for example, to help sighted users identify this specific painting. So just to clarify, option C, painting of George Washington crossing the Delaware River. Option D might be appropriate if the purpose is not just about the content, but to present a specific art technique. And option E may also be appropriate if a detailed examination of the painting is in order. But it's too long and verbose to be of much use, so I would definitely reduce it because it's too much information. It would be better served as part of the paragraph instead of part of the alt text. So sorry I went a little bit over time. I hope this was helpful. Do you have any questions or comments? And sorry, John, if you need to
Oh, no problem.
close the
Thank you.
session.
This
Thank
was
you.
good. Any questions from anyone? Okay. Thank you. We'll stop the recording.